Richard, excellent presentation, except for your bandwidth. But besides that, you got your point across. I have a feeling as you were researching this, your understanding of reincarnation had to expand quite a bit. Am I right in that?
You're absolutely right. In fact, there were times when I started working with the expanding self-soul group, I would say to myself, is this really it? Is this right? But as the more I worked with it, the more I found that it made a lot of sense. And so, yes, I did have that experience. That as I went along, I found that I had to change even my own notions about reincarnation, and as this model developed.
I feel like this is the best presentation on the subject. It's a subject I tend to avoid because very hard to explain all of this in a nutshell. And I think you did a fabulous job today, bringing to light, the deeper aspects. I always just tell people, yeah, it's true, but not the way you think. And I think you covered that pretty well. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Gary. Hyacinth, would you like to go ahead, please?
Yes.
Well, I just
Thank
wanted
you,
to say
Richard.
that. I just wanted to say, Gary, that this is a book that's, as I said in the blurb that I wrote. This is not a book about past lives per se. There are lots of books on those, but this is about the mechanics, and there are very few books and websites on that. There's some, but not a lot. And so I felt trying to understand how it happens is also important, that because you find that when you do that, you run into the contradictions and the anomalies. For instance, how many of you know where the higher self came from? Those that use that term. Where did it come from? How did it get to be so wise? Who is it? And we say, oh yeah, that's us, and it's the greater part of myself. But how did it start out? Nobody talks about that. Spiral reincarnation goes into that in depth.
Thank you, Richard. That was very good. You brought up some new points that's new to me, and I'll have to wait for the replay to go through again to get your questions, your answers. Very interesting. As a show and tell person, I just want to show you this.
That's the Romanesco cauliflower.
That's right. I buy it whenever I see it, and I eat a lot of this.
I've grown it
Thank
even. But it online that's often described as a broccoli, and it's not. It's actually a cauliflower. Just an aside. Okay.
Yes.
Richard, thank you very much. It was an excellent presentation. I really appreciated how you laid this out in a way that would be easier for us to get back to what Gary was saying, to get a little easier for us to explain to our own mind, as well as being able to explain to others. This is probably just semantics, but is it really reincarnation or is it incarnation?
Very good. I'm glad you picked that up. In the book, I actually addressed that is there any such thing as reincarnation? Because if you think of it in terms of simultaneous lives, where all your incarnations are happening at the same time, and so it's not reincarnation in that way. However, if you look at it from the standpoint of the expanding self-soul group that I described, the expanding self-soul group is having a type of reincarnational experience. Maybe you aren't, but your expanding self-soul group is following the timeline. So it's a different view on what incarnation is versus reincarnation. Thanks for bringing that up.
Thank you, Richard, very much. I appreciate your help.
Yes, Richard, thank you. This was mind expanding, and your architecture of reincarnation, I really appreciate it. We've had Transmediums present to present, and one, like Abraham comes through, and he's there. His group that he represents is focused on healing, and then Scott Milligan brings through Eric, and that soul group is focused on educating us about the afterlife. And I was wondering, in your research, did you find or identify or hear of any transmediums where the soul group who comes through them is trying to give us more information on reincarnation or incarnation?
Well, that type of information has come through, as you probably know, through mediums, for decades, and it's come through books and channelers. So the information has come through from different, in different ways. It's interesting that you mentioned that these soul groups have a focus. In the book, I go into the focus of the soul groups. In fact, I feel that, some soul groups were the designer of stars, others were the designer of planets, others were the designer of the animals. And I have found that, if you do some intuitive work, you might find what was the focus of your own soul group. For instance, if you have a really great interest in the weather, you might find that, as my expanding self soul group actually design the weather. What do you know? So, and that I feel is actually what happened, that we did have these focuses. And then not only did we have these focuses, or foci, but we incarnated into them. For instance, those of us that designed human beings, we incarnated as human beings. Those who designed animals, they became the animal spirits. Those who designed the plants, they became the plant spirits. Those who worked with water is a fascinating creation. They became the water spirits, etc.
Thank you.
That sort of answers your question, but okay.
Yes, Richard, thank you so much. I'm not sure I know exactly how to word this. For people who have a sense of past lives or go through regression, how have there been studies where people who see reincarnation as a spiral versus a linear process, how has that enhanced their understanding or reason for even venturing into past life experiences? Is there a difference in the actual person's experience? Because my thoughts are we only need or want to know about our past in order to enhance our current life. So how does the linear versus the spiral affect our experiencing our past lives?
All right. That's a good question. I'll answer it this way.
Thank you.
Knowing about past lives, if it was so important that we know about our past lives, we would remember them. Just like, you were in high school, you remember 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and you're very aware that you went through those and you learned certain things and things happened, and you can use that experience to, learn even more. Past lives don't work like that because most people aren't even aware of them. And certainly unless you go through some extraordinary measure like a past life regression, or you have a spontaneous experience like children do of a past life, they're just not really on the radar so much. You have to go looking for them. Now, they can be very helpful, of course. There are people that have solved psychological problems by going into past lives. But on the other hand, we have had thousands upon thousands of past lives. And imagine trying to go through all of those to figure out all your problems. You wouldn't do anything else. You wouldn't have time for anything else. So, there are times when past life regressions are helpful, but as a whole, the spiral reincarnation model maintains that, we're here to concentrate on the present life and to work through it with the information we have. And if you do get some information from past lives, great, but really the focus is on this life. And the thing is that unlike the orthodox model linear reincarnation, where past lives are important because, well, you've had karma and you've got to fix that and it's got to be resolved and compensated, spiral reincarnation is not bound by any system of karma because it doesn't believe it exists. And therefore, you're free to live your life, enjoy it, and experience it without thinking, oh my God, I didn't get it right this time. There is no getting it right. And the reason there's no getting it right is because you're already perfect. All that has happened is you've come into this lifetime, you have a certain soul portion that has come in, you have a certain understanding, you're here to have certain experiences according to it, and then when you return, you bring those experiences back. And it's not about learning lessons and getting it right and becoming perfect and evolving. Those things actually sort of take away from the fun when you think about it.
Okay, thank you. I had
hope
missed
that
the
answers
part
your
of it
question.
being linear was related to karma. Okay.
Yeah, it is. That's, you need a linear system, a sequential system for karma to work. Karma can't work in a simultaneous system because, you're not dealing with past lives. All the lives are simultaneous.
Sure. Thank you for your presentation. It was wonderful. You have amazing knowledge. And so I started out about 5 years ago reading Frederick Dodson's books on parallel universes. Would that coincide with any of the information that you would have on this reincarnation or incarnation?
Well, I haven't read his material. However, yes, because parallel dimensions or universes or multiverses, whatever you want to call it, figure very highly in the spiral reincarnation system, because we incarnate on Earth only once, but we have, who knows, untold incarnations across parallel dimensions. Now, these parallel dimensions can be very much like your present Earth life. In fact, the same figures, the same historical figures, the same history, the same culture. It's just that there might be slight differences. And this actually shows up in regressions. Now, there have been past life regressions where someone will be regressed to, say, a figure in World War I, a soldier. He lived in a certain town and he went to war. And there might be an historical record left of who this person was because he had military service, and you can find out who his relatives were, his brothers, sisters, parents, where he lived, because that would be in the military record. And so a past life regression like that is done, information is gathered, and it's found, wow, the street that I got in my regression doesn't exist. Or in my past life regression, I had 2 sisters, yet when I looked up the historical figure, he had no sisters. Well, how can that happen? Now, there are those who use that as an example to say, okay, reincarnation is bogus because you're just making it up. You went through this past life regression, it's not true. You go to the historical record doesn't back up what you've got, so therefore what you're getting is just your imagination. However, if we understand parallel dimensions, we find that this example is not a problem with historical records. It's actually an illustration of a parallel life where the details are different. Yes, let's say you incarnated as this World War I figure, but it happened in another dimension, and in that other dimension, you didn't have those sisters, and you didn't live on that street, so you lived somewhere else. And so parallel dimensions help to explain things like that. Now, who was that soldier that you saw with historical record? That was a member of your expanding self soul group.
Okay, my next question is, I've met people that I instantly connect with, and I realize that they're probably a soul member of my group. But my next question is, how do I get your book? Where can I find your book?
Okay, you can't find it anywhere yet because I have yet to publish it. I'm going to do that
Okay.
this month, by the way. It'll come out on Amazon Kindle.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you. I'll just, Richard, I'll just bring up a couple of things from the chat. We've got a lady that's had some dental work done and she really doesn't feel like coming on camera, which is pretty understandable. And she says that her father, who's on the other side, has showed that we are really on a Ferris wheel with about 100 in our soul group, like on a Ferris wheel type of setup. Is that similar to what you are talking about?
If, without going into that further, it sounds similar. Now, the thing is about people that have passed is where are they on the vibrational plane? Because with information coming from the other side, there's always the caveat that, where are they? If they've just passed, for instance, they know about just as much as they did when they were alive. Knowledge of the spirit world comes after, to use an expression, after a time. There is no time there, but because, here we have a certain amount of forgetfulness. We have what are called the veils, and we have a certain level of understanding. This group, for instance, has a higher level of understanding because we came in with soul portions that allowed us to do that. Other people have come in with a different amount of soul portion, and they just don't get this at all, and that's fine. That's another path. No path is better than another, by the way. And so on the other side, there are souls that decide to remain sort of on that path where they're not going to know everything, just as we don't know everything. And they will gradually remember it as they go. And that's just what they want to do in terms of an experience. And so where they are in that path determines how much they know. And so there are souls that come through that talk about karma, that talk about sequential lives, and you think, well, that's got to be the system. Well, that's their understanding where they are. But as they go higher, as we say, higher in the vibration, they find, well, it's not exactly that way. And like that's why Imperator, for instance, a soul group has come through and said, reincarnation is not what you think it is at all. And I believe that. I feel that, I've developed a system that's understandable, just like the Orthodox system with its soul evolution and lessons, et cetera, is understandable. And the circular reincarnation model is understandable, but that's about how we have to handle it, because we just can't, for one, describe it in terms of, say, how a soul group can see it, because we just don't have that. Our physical brains just can't approach that level of understanding. So this entity that came through and talked about a Ferris wheel is probably, getting information, or maybe in a vibration where beginning to see the fact that he's actually part of a soul group.
Richard, something I wanted to add that just sort of supports what you were saying. You said we individually don't reincarnate again. And I've had mediums tell me there is nobody that is unreachable on the other side. So that supports what you were saying. They could be gone for 1,000 years and they're still reachable if they want to talk.
That's a big problem with the sequential model, the linear reincarnation model. Is here you are in this life, And yet all your other lives are available for contact by mediums. And so literally you can go to a medium and you can talk to yourself. Now, how does that work? How can they be there if you're here? You're the soul that's incarnating, and linear reincarnation cannot deal with that issue. Now, circular reincarnation has a better explanation through soul portioning, or what they call soul fragmenting. And spiral reincarnation has that, except the big difference is that your earth lives are actually incarnations of your soul group, while your parallel dimensions are incarnations of you as a multi-located being. So
I think it's a much clearer definition, probably missing some pieces still because we're linear minded, but I think one of the clearest definitions I've heard, and I thank you for that. So.
Well, you know, one of the things that I think about sometimes is that you know, one of these days I will pass, and to me, passing is like walking into the next room, and I'll go and say, well, how much did I get right? You know, I'll start asking the soul beings, how much of this did I, you know, was I close to the mark or what? I'm not going to go over there thinking this is, you know, what I've written is the way it is. This is just the way I think it might be, but the way it is, no one knows. I mean, I think it's sort of like these great questions. Who is God? What is truth? What is love? Well, we have all sorts of notions, but nobody can come up with a, you know, definitive answer. Here's what truth is. And it's the same with reincarnation. It falls into that same vein. And so I'll be just as happy as heck if, you know, whatever they tell me, this is how it really works. And maybe I'm on one of those paths where I won't know for quite some time until I, you know, just, you know, take on more remembrance. You know, we know everything already as soul entities. We know everything. It's just a matter of remembering. It isn't like we're learning, which is the linear reincarnation model. You're learning it. The spiral reincarnation model, you already know it. It's just that you forgot it. And that was by choice.
In your book, Richard, you reference the Pageant Material. And so I Googled the Pageant Material. And of course, Pageant, for people that don't know, was channeling his deceased wife for quite a while. And this back in I think in the 30s, 40s, and beyond. And they're basically saying they have no proof of reincarnation at all. So I was wondering why you included that in the book.
Well, the reason I included it was that, you know, the Pageant Material features notable personages like Madame Blavatsky, who preached reincarnation, and Aristotle, and I think Aquinas is in there. And so you'd think that if anyone would know about reincarnation, these figures would. And they all say there is no reincarnation. And Jesus is in there too, you're right. And they say there's no reincarnation. So how is that possible when other sources talk about reincarnation? And that's why I, you know, in the book I explain, you know, the difficulties with bringing information from their plane into this plane and what happens. And so, you know, the book goes into that in detail, and why in the Pageant messages they can say there's no reincarnation, while plenty of other channelings and mediumship material talks about reincarnation. So that's an anomaly that has to be dealt with, and I try to do that in the book.
Personally, I like the circular explanation the best, where the higher self shoots a portion of its energy into this body and this incarnation.
Right.
And then I take all of my experiences back to help educate the larger higher self, which could be part of a soul group. And there's a woman who wrote, she was a lawyer. She had a near-death experience and wrote, 5 or 6 books called Backwards, the Backwards series. I don't know if you read that, but when she had her near-death experience, she went back to her soul group, and they were all saying, tell us tell us about your experience being a human. We're really interested to know, because not all of them had taken incarnation.
Right.
So there's that too.
Yeah. Yeah, just so everyone knows, Steve is one of the people I actually sent the book to for review, so he might be a little bit ahead of you, which is why he's talking about what he's talking about. I'm waiting for your comments, Steve, in an email of some sort. So,
Okay.
I'm very interested to hear what you have to say.
Well, just
Okay.
in general, I would say that I don't think most of us need to know about reincarnation or how it works in general, because there's lots of people that don't believe in it, and they still are going to be having a life experience, and then hopefully having another life experience, on and on and on. And there's plenty of proof. And Dr. What's his name? Turner? The children who remember reports of their previous lives. There's plenty of proof right there from the children who remember, and they can tell you exactly where they were and where they died, and then they go research and find that little town where they used to live, and there's plenty of proof, So, but that'd be more the linear model, I would guess.
Spiral reincarnation tries to do is explain doesn't mention them specifically, but with those children who have such an extraordinary recall, you have to remember that person they were is on the other side and available for mediumship contact, which seems to, a point that seems to escape, discussion of what these children go through.
If you studied Dolores Canon and all, which I read a lot of her books, and I actually interviewed her in person.
Yeah, I've read her.
Before she died. She was in the habit of using people as somnambulistic, she'd put them under in hypnosis. And for a while, she was contacting Nostradamus. So, and it didn't matter after a while if it was the same person in hypnosis. That person might move away, and then a new one would come in, and she could still talk to Nostradamus. And, like you were saying, I think the way it works is you're really talking to the larger aspect of that person when you're talking to, the dead personalities that we all know about, that kind of thing. And I think that's how it works.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you're right about, just to comment on it, you need to know about reincarnation. No, you don't. All paths are valid. And that we're here to have experiences. The ways a spiral reincarnation works is very similar to circular reincarnation. Is that we have soul portions that are sent out into bodies, and some of us have more soul portion than others. Now, it doesn't make us better; it just means we're going to have a different experience. For instance, there are those who have soul portions where they become enlightened, and they're enlightened beings. Are they better than anybody else? No, it's just a different experience. In fact, in a parallel dimension, you might be doing the same thing right now. You're an enlightened being. In this one, you're doing what you're doing now. But, the Michael material talks about the infant soul, the baby soul, the young soul, the mature soul, the old soul. Mm-hmm. And those are thought about as, soul progressions. So you start out as the baby, go to the infant, but spiral reincarnation sees that very differently. Those are just soul portions that are chosen in order to have different experiences. So for many of us, we took the old soul portion in order to understand different things, and whereas others might have taken the young soul portion because they wanted to explore materialism and making money and wealth and prosperity, and it's just a different experience. Mm-hmm. And you're right. These experiences, we take them back to our Expanding Self Soul group, and the Expanding Self Soul group says, "Thanks very much, because we've certainly learned a lot from what you went through." And I think that's a big part of it.
Yes, it's just this children's experiences where they have even marks in this body for what happened when they had died in another one. So there's a lot of I don't know, different opinions and different happenings, and as you say, different experiences, because we are all different. We are all experiencing different things. So I don't think that it's the same for everybody. And that was the one point. The other thing was about Jesus talking about reincarnation. I'll just give a quote, Matthew chapter 11, verse 7, where they talked about John the Baptist and Elijah. And what it said is they knew that he was talking about Elijah, about John the Baptist. So there is, Jesus talks about this. The church doesn't talk about it and will deny, but it's there from the Master himself.
Well, you have to remember the church, whether it's Protestant or Catholic, or in terms of the belief in reincarnation, are actually in a minority. More people, if you look at Buddhists and Hindu, there are far more of those people than us, and they believe in reincarnation. So we're actually catching up in the West.
Yes, Ian Stevenson did say that for the countries which believe in reincarnation, there are far more incidences of people coming back and remembering.
Sure. Well, part of it is the parents, he explains that the parents are more open to it, whereas in the West, the child might start talking about a past life and the parents, that's nice, Johnny, but, to go out and play now. Whereas in the East, really? Tell us more. It's just a different cultural mindset.
Yeah. Culture plays a very big part in all of this.
Oh, yes. And the book goes into that, how culture influences even our belief in reincarnation. In fact, when you read the book, you could even say that what I've talked about is affected by culture. That's one of the reasons I bring in the spiral, nature, the symbols, myth, because I'm trying to get at a system that leaves culture behind and is more timeless. Whereas, as the book shows, both linear reincarnation and circular reincarnation have a cultural influence. In fact, very decidedly when you consider linear reincarnation.
Fabulous presentation, Richard. Just a couple of people I'd like to raise. Dr. Walter Semkiw, he is passionate about reincarnation because he says that it has the potential to break down humanity's prejudices. Once people, using the linear reincarnation model, once people realize that they could have reincarnated as their enemy, so that you have people of one religion who oppose another religion, then remember a life in that other religion that they oppose. He's quite passionate about that. He was the one who discovered the Barbara Carlo, who claimed to be the reincarnation of Anna Frank. The other thing that seems to me, I'm noticing a lot more, not only mediums, but also out-of-body experiences who are talking about reincarnation. A very good example is Jürgen Zever. I don't know if you've read his.
I know about Jürgen. I've listened to him on these, on this podcast. So.
Right. Well, Jürgen has a fascinating discussion where at one time he was in the very higher spheres, and he claims that he saw all of his past lives stretched out like a mandala. And he was able to step into one of them, to any one of them, and experience it as reality, which is a really interesting concept, this whole idea that they are all accessible to us. And that brings me back to the work of Dick Sutphin many years ago.
Good old Dick Sutphin.
He was one of the pioneers of reincarnation, who talked about parallel lives, that we can actually tune into our parallel lives and gain wisdom and information. For me, the whole purpose, the whole benefit of reincarnation is getting this wider perspective.
Yes.
And I'm really interested that our society seems now to have embraced it. It seems to have entered mainstream, and particularly in the last 5 years. But I just really think
Yes.
it's really interesting. On the one hand, in a society where we're seeing the rise in fundamentalism and tribalism in the last 20 years, compared to we had a sort of internationalism immediately after the Second World War, that reincarnation is coming up and could have some kind of benefit.
Yes. Well, it's nice that you mentioned Dick Sutphin, because I've actually done past life regressions through his, that he had, guided past life regressions that he had on what we used to call what are they? Oh yes, cassette tapes.
The
And
old
it
tapes,
tells you tells you how far back
back in the
that goes.
70s. Yeah.
But the book, one thing I didn't cover was the role or the relationship of spiral reincarnation to the transformation. And that part of the transformation, of course, is moving the earth and all upon her to a higher vibration. And I feel that spiral reincarnation helps to create more enlightenment in that area, in that, if I can use that term, in that, through linear reincarnation, and also, and this is the influence of churches as well, is that we see ourselves as lowly, we see ourselves as sinners, we see ourselves as, the linear reincarnation has us as primitive forms trying to evolve spiritually. And the spiral reincarnation doesn't follow any of that. In the spiral reincarnation, you are an eternal, perfect, limitless being. You've only decided to come down here in a soul portion to have certain experiences. But who you really are is far beyond what we can imagine. We created everything. We created the universe. And the book also goes into how this is not our only universe. We've done countless numbers of universes. And so the idea that we're some sort of lowly, primitive creature, in terms of a soul is just ridiculous, because if we knew who we really are, we wouldn't be able to express it in words. And that's, I feel, part of helping us to realize who we are spiritually, which helps us to raise the vibration, that we're not lowly, primitive souls who can barely, raise our own vibration. No, we're powerful beings, and through our spirituality, we're going to raise the vibration of the earth. That's the plan. We're going to have new types of experiences, and I feel that's the plan. We're in the time of the 1111. Spiral reincarnation talks about that.